I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a gamer above the age of 25 that isn't aware of the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater franchise. It stormed onto the scene in the late 90s and brought a cultural revolution with it. For the first time, skateboarding was introduced to a lot of people who might never have given it a second thought. I know for me personally, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater got me fully immersed into skateboarding culture in a way that I never would have if the franchise had never existed. While the franchise ended up stumbling and losing its way over time, the early entries mostly remain fun to this day and a significant source of nostalgia for a lot of gamers. In most people's minds, it's been a long time since there's been an entry in the franchise that was good. Remastering the first two games seemed like the perfect way to bring back the franchise that so many people have so much love for. They took these well-loved games and brought them into a new era with a beautiful coat of paint and a few updates to the mechanics that weren't originally present in the first two games. With this review, we'll take a look at the good, the bad, and the nostalgic. I'll do my best to break down a lot of the detailed changes that I noticed so that you can really get a feel for some of the things that might go unnoticed. Let's jump in and take a look. The first thing that I'd like to dive into is the mechanics. The game feels true to the original two entries in the franchise, but it brings the updated mechanics that were introduced in future iterations. This includes things like reverts, spine transfers, wall plants, and hidden tricks, which are things like double and triple kickflips, changing grinds, changing lip tricks, and various flatland tricks during manuals. Another change to the mechanics from the original two games is that the special meter fills as you're doing a combo instead of when you land a combo. This was introduced in Tony Hawk 3 and it really helped take the combo system to the next level and allowed for some truly insane scores. In fact, there's actually a trophy for landing a 1 million point combo and another trophy for getting a score of 10 million points in a single run. These kinds of feats would have been close to impossible without cheats of some sort in the original versions of these games. And speaking of impossible feats, the game includes some built-in cheats by default, so if you want to break the game and have a perfect balance or super stats, that's an option for you here. Overall, the mechanics here are what I consider to be the best the franchise ever had to offer. The game feels really great to play, especially for veterans of the Tony Hawk series. The next thing I'd like to touch on are some of the non-gameplay aspects of the game. Originally, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 primarily found their replay value in playing through the campaign with each skater and unlocking different things like skate videos and secret characters. If you were really hardcore back in the day, you might have tried to complete every gap in the game as well. This game takes a little bit different of an approach to the replayability aspect of the game and adds a more modern take on some of the systems. There's a pretty extensive challenge system which includes a set of objectives for different modes, skaters, and so on. This is primarily how you unlock new Create-A-Skater clothing, boards, special move slots and outfits for skaters, and new Create-A-Park pieces. Next, the way that the game is broken up is also interesting. The game has 3 different tours to go through and serves as a good way to experience the games a bit like they were originally. Tony Hawk 1 and 2 both have their own tour where you play through the original set of levels and complete the same objectives that were in the original games. They've added new objectives to the Tony Hawk 1 campaign to bring it more in line with the content that you'll find in Tony Hawk 2. The Tony Hawk 2 campaign features all the same objectives that were in the original game, with the exception of finding all the cash icons, as the cash system in the game is no longer for buying stats and tricks, but rather cosmetics for your profile and Create-A-Skater. The third tour, Ranked and Speedrun, is where most of the replayability comes in, as it's where you'll find single runs, free skate, and the new Speedrun mode, which is where the player tries to finish every objective in a level in the fastest possible time. As implied by the name of the tour, this mode ranks the players' scores on a global leaderboard and shows how players stack up against the rest of the world. One of the last things I'd like to touch on that feels interesting to me is the multiplayer. You have the original split-screen multiplayer, which has been standard fare in Tony Hawk games for a while, and then you have online multiplayer. I've spent a good chunk of time with the online multiplayer, and at this point it doesn't feel super extensive, but it's still a lot of fun. You basically get thrown into a random lobby and play various competitive game modes on rotation until the map switches. From what I can tell at this point, there really isn't much else to the multiplayer. It's somewhat bare bones, but I've still enjoyed the time that I've spent with it so far. Overall, I think there's a lot to like from the non-gameplay specific aspects of the game, and I can definitely see myself coming back to it for a while. While I found a lot of things that I really enjoyed about the game as a veteran of the series, there were definitely a few things that I think the game didn't do so well. For starters, in previous Tony Hawk games, the colliders on objectives tended to be bigger than the objects themselves, which allowed the player to get relatively close to an objective and still get credit for collecting it. In this game, the colliders don't seem to give the player any leniency. Sure, this is realistic, but I actually just found it to be tedious when I missed the same objective by a few inches like 4 times in a row. The final thing that I think the game didn't do so well was actually something that we saw Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD do, and that was a map system which listed the location of each objective and also included a description of each level's gaps as well. While this feature wasn't present in the original versions of these games, it would have been a nice quality of life feature for those objectives that seemed to be a bit unclear, or the ones that took several runs simply to find the final whatever I was supposed to be looking for. This is even more unfortunate when it comes to the gaps. While clearing the gaps in the Tony Hawk franchise has definitely only been something the most diehard fans ever pursued, it would feel far more doable and fun if they included locations for each gap rather than only giving the player the name of every gap in each level. Maybe it's not a fair knock against this game, but since it was a feature in a previous game, I really would have loved to see it here. Overall, my complaints with what the game didn't do so well were few and far between, but the game definitely has some things that it could have done better, and I could possibly see being improved in future patches of the game. So, is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered worth it at the full price of $40? I had a ton of fun revisiting both of these games with a gorgeous new coat of paint and the improved mechanics. As someone who's incredibly nostalgic for this franchise, I'd have to absolutely say that it's worth it at the full price of $40. If you've never experienced the early entries in the Tony Hawk franchise, this remaster is a great way to do it, but you might not have the same wow factor as those of us who've been waiting for another great Tony Hawk game for quite a while. The game is a lot of fun, the graphics and the animations are beautiful, the challenges will keep you busy for a while, and overall, if you've ever had any interest in the Tony Hawk franchise, I don't think you'll go wrong by checking out Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you're looking for more retro game content, please subscribe and please check out the Worth It or Worthless podcast where we take a deep dive into a retro game from my own personal collection every couple weeks. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.